Hello, everyone. I'm very, very excited. I was talking to my dear friend Al Zaytoun just before we started. This is our final webinar, webinar number 7. And we had more than 5 hours of discussions from all sorts of organizations, all sorts of topics related to the project management next generation. And today, to wrap up this series, we have absolutely two very special companies and two very special guests. We will talk about Sunrise and Mayo Clinic, and I want them, Terry and Luca, to join us now on this. Terry, welcome, and Luca, welcome. It's a real pleasure to be with you today. And what is the most incredible, because most of the time I ask all of you online to tell me where you come from, and it's so interesting because I am speaking from Lisbon, Portugal, Al Zaytoun from DC in the US, Terry from Minnesota in the US, and Luca from Zurich in Switzerland. So 4 people joined thanks to technology and thanks to the opportunity of being together and talking to you. So Luca and Terry, thank you very much. Al Zaytoun, welcome, my friend.
Okay. Oh, it's a pleasure. And you told me earlier when we interacted that I'm too serious today, so I'm going to try to light.
No, this is just a very absolutely informal.
You're absolutely spot on. And when you mentioned the journey of this being the last webinar, and we look at the two who have joined us today, very distinct organizations, very different organizations as well. Both great friends, both great contributors to the project management profession, which is really fantastic at various levels. So I cannot be more excited.
Coming also to the connections inside PMI, right? Yeah. We were at the board there together, PMI Switzerland, where you first met. So it's fantastic to have this. And I want to kick off even before we start, because I want to give you the opportunity that each of you introduce yourself, talking about your journey and your current professional role. So let's start with Terry, if you allow me, Luca.
So a pleasure to be here with everyone today. Thank you so much for the invitation and for the ability to contribute to this book as well. It's absolutely incredible. I've been in the project management, portfolio management profession for over 25 years in a lot of different roles. Mainly, majority of it's been spent at the Mayo Clinic, which many of you hopefully recognize the name. It's a world leader in healthcare, also the #1 hospital in the United States as well. And during this time, I've led a number of major initiatives. I formed the Enterprise Project and Portfolio Management Office, and then most recently developed strategy management services within a large department here at the organization, where I could take really everything that I've learned from PMI, from the board, from my experiences with these wonderful gentlemen, to a whole nother level and really look at things from a broad spectrum. So it's really been quite the journey, and really appreciate the opportunity to be here and share some of that with you today.
Thanks everybody. My name is Luca. I spent more than 20 years in my life dealing with project management in different companies, before as a consultant in a big consulting firm, and then in Sunrise. Sunrise is the second largest telco operator in Switzerland. So I am director of business program management there, and my key role is really to get the business idea and make it happen. No, so this is my profession. And thanks again for the invite, and I hope to have a nice chat with you among how this profession is changing in these challenging times.
Very cool. So I'm going to go to Terry first. Terry, I have a vision in my head being on a flight one time, and you were deep in research. You had a lot of notes, and you said, "Al, can you have a look at this?" I'm trying to remember where and what flight. And were you at the time already doing this SMS construct, the strategic management services? Was it already being born then, or what was happening? And if it wasn't, can you tell us more about SMS and why is that so relevant to how we shaped the focus strategically on project management, and how relevant is that for the next gen PM? So love to hear from you on that.
Absolutely. And I do remember that flight with you, Al. I think I was taking notes after one of the Global Executive Council meetings. So I learned so much from all of these organizations. And you're absolutely right. I mean, the ideas were born then, again, starting, my career in doing project management, but then understanding more about portfolios and the strategies and how that all came together. And that's really what started it, is recognizing that the projects, and as Luca mentioned, it's really just an execution of the strategy. But so often, strategy's done over here and the projects are done over here, and somebody may or may not ever recognize the benefits from it. So my vision was really to pull this all together. I'd worked in so many areas at my organization, and I'd seen how they've been disconnected, and sometimes with not some very good results. And really, it was really to pull it all together into that framework, because really, project management is, like I said, it's the execution of the strategy. It's realizing the benefits. And so the 5 phases we created with strategy management services really leads us through all of those to make sure we're starting with the planning, we're getting through the execution, but we're recognizing the benefits as well. And so I was fortunate in my career, again, been in a lot of different areas at Mayo, have a great background, love moving around, doing different things, to be able to work with a very large department in our organization that basically said, go ahead, implement your vision. And so been able to do that over the last 4 years and really grow it from a concept and idea, reorganize a whole team around those phases and that vision, and really getting to be a successful business partner with an area that's in a significant amount of growth and change right now. So been a lot of fun to be able to do this.
Do you think the buy-in is where it needed to be, or is where you wanted it to be? Is your dream almost achieved?
Great question. I'd have to say, yeah, this is probably the most fun I've had when you're at this point in your career and you can pull all of this together. But what's really been rewarding is the leaders of the area, the executive leaders that I work with, really embracing this, understanding it, embracing it, seeing the value, trusting that we had the right goals, working with them as trusted partners. And especially, one of my great examples is, in healthcare, we've been through a lot of change recently, but we were in the front lines of this pandemic the last couple of years, and just my area being able to pivot quickly and to move to the changes in the strategic direction of our organization. We're constantly moving and changing. And so that's what I find exciting about it as well. And then bringing the team along, because they're excited about being able to see that broader vision and how it all comes together, not just the project they're working on, but the whole picture.
Thank you. And Luca, I think this resonates probably with you very much. I remember the big focus of your piece in the book has also this whole project leadership and changing the project managers to project leaders, and how that truly makes a distinct difference. Why did you believe so much in this? And do you believe this has helped you also personally in your career? What are some of the additional insights you want to add to Terry's views of the importance of leadership as well?
Yeah, I mean, as Terry was saying, we are living in a period of big changes, no? The pandemic and also the fact that digital disruption is really changing many industries, no? So the profession of the project manager has to change as well. This is my belief, and has to go more through certain soft skill, not that are fundamental now. So it's really to be less, for me, project and goal oriented and more people oriented. So give the possibility to the people of the team to get empowerment, no, to get really to be the one that are moving the things, and also step out from this command and control, no, that usually we think is the good project manager. In reality, we need to move to a different world, where, for example, you need to put together different culture, different people, also different technologies coming in. So you really need more this soft skill, this communication, this empowerment, this servant leadership. This is exactly what I'm trying to, let's say, to write in my article.
Fantastic. And that probably means that you're happy with PMI's changes in the talent triangle as well, moving that to power skills, right? So the soft skills, have more impact.
Exactly. The important thing is that we are a profession in evolution. Okay, this is clear because the world is changing as well. The good thing is that we are fundamental. I still believe that our profession is really fundamental. Is changing, but is still very important, even more than in the past. So I'm very happy that also PMI, let's say, is embracing this change because it's going in the right direction.
Super, great news. Yeah, go ahead, Ricardo.
Yeah, great. So Terry, I have a question for you, and I want to go back to the Strategy Management Service, or SMS, and it's 5 stages that you mentioned. And one of the key aspects that we all see a lot of challenges, I'll just reach out to you saying this, it's how you can ensure the strategic value of initiatives is connected, well discussed, and orchestrated.
Yeah, that is an excellent question, and it's one that we actually spend a lot of time focusing on and trying to tackle, because it's great to have these wonderful ideas, but that doesn't mean that they're going to offer the value that you need for the organization. And we found it sometimes very difficult, and Luca, was talking about prioritization as well, to have someone who can make a decision, about the value, about the strategic value, and understand that, that there's a cost plus the value. So what we've been doing actually is using data to better articulate that, using, again, some of the PMI concepts with portfolio management, really managing it through the different life cycles, but getting the business, really working with them a lot up front in that strategic partnership and planning phase to really understand, okay, we appreciate all the great ideas. We can only do so many of them. What is the purpose? What is the value? What's the intent? How are you going to measure that? And sometimes it's very difficult, we've found, for leaders. They have these ideas. They don't necessarily know, how to measure it. And so we work with them more on the front end of that. And then once it, kind of goes through a few processes and discussions and gets prioritized, then really, as my team gets more and more engaged, what are the specific metrics? How are we going to measure them? When are we going to measure them? But one of the things we're expanding, though, too, is beyond the project start and end. It's to that final phase, the benefit realization, and realizing that the benefits very likely aren't going to happen when you close the project. They could be 6, 12, 18 months later, but having processes, that's the beauty of having the full spectrum. We're still engaged all the way through to see 12 months later, was the value achieved, and to have that partnership with the organization to ensure that occurred, and that use it as a lesson learned for things that are still coming through. So it really comes down to data, comes through partnerships, comes through discussions, really understanding what it is you're trying to accomplish and getting that on the front end as best as possible.
Yeah, fantastic. When I hear this, and I heard Al mention to Luca about culture, I go back to my beginning of my career, where project management was all about deliver on time, on budget, on scope, and what they asked you to do, and that's it. And now outcome, benefit, it is at the absolute center of what we do. And this is a big and really a big cultural shift. And Luca, I want to explore with you the concept you said on the book about this right cultural shift in Sunrise, and how you did to get the leadership to understand this absolutely changing nature of the project leaders, and the alignment, and even your comment that Al said about the changes on the PMI talent triangle. Because honestly, if we go back 15, 20 years ago, it was very, very different. This concept of changing culture and embrace change, it is now very different. Now we can see PMI with the change makers, and now we are talking about the PMI talent triangle. So how you navigate that inside Sunrise?
This is a very good question, Ricardo. Also difficult question, in the sense that you can always teach something concrete, but culture is complicated. Cultural change are very complicated. So I think in Sunrise we were also lucky because we came from a merge, from a recent merge, and this was a little bit also a merge of different cultures, of different business. No, one was Sunrise, more mobile, more oriented to the mobility of people, and one was UPC that was more a cable company. No, so you can imagine a big difference also in executing the things, also in the project management styles, let's say. So how we did it, I think we took the best, let's say the best values out of it, and we spread them in a very transparent way. No, so for example, what we do in my department when we run all this portfolio of initiatives, we really apply these cultural values in what we are doing. We are living them really in the things that we are doing. So when we say we are one, we are bold and we are passionate, these are our values, means really that we empower the people. And as you said, empowering the people, we give them also the possibility to do mistakes, meaning that not all the project can come on time or on budget, but if they bring the value, no, as we said, that are expected from the project are still worthy for the company. Of course, to have these culture shifts sometimes is not easy, and you have, of course, in the company some departments that are still looking for the past, no, looking for the like finance, for example, that is very budget oriented, but because this is clearly their profession, no. But step by step, you start to introduce a different way of working, really a different way also of doing things and empowering, as I said, the people. So we step out from the project, we go more on people, we go on more on value, on the possibility also that people can contribute with ideas and even change, no, what has been decided at the beginning, if this is still bringing value, if this is still aligned with the strategy. That, as Terry said, is sometimes very difficult because it's very easy to say what is a strategy, but to put it in place and to realize it and to get the value out of it, this is, of course, very, very complex. I don't have a secret, let's say, receipt for that, but it's something where you need really to spend a lot of time. Cultural changes are the most difficult things, okay? But if you start really living these values, no, while you are doing your work, this becomes something transparent and something that the organization will pick up naturally. So this is my suggestion, let's say.
But I agree with you. I remember during my time at Brightline that I led for PMI, and I don't want to say that having ideas it's easy. Okay, it's an easy test. No, but transform them into reality is hard work. Because on paper that is very, very easy for you to put in a nice PowerPoint or a nice website, but really, because reality is brutal many times, and why I see, for example, at the same time I see a lot of pressure for all of us to change. I see at the same time a decent environment helping us toward that direction, because if you don't change, it will be very hard for your organization and for you to overcome the new scenario. And
Yes.
this is for me a very critical point, and this is why for me culture is something absolutely at the heart of what this next generation of PM should be. But
Exactly.
My friend, there's a ton of learning right there, right? So, and I think you should coin this statement you just said a while ago. Reality is brutal, right? And this is Ricardo Vargas.
But it is brutal.
Yeah.
It's brutal.
Yeah.
It's brutal.
No, I agree.
And my friend, what concern? It happens everywhere.
Yeah.
Look, for example, the war today. The war today in Ukraine. I don't want to make any judgment, but look, reality is brutal. I have only one thing that I'm 100% sure is that Russia government was not expecting what they're facing now.
Yeah.
Because
but listen, so
it's
but
different.
seriously, I would coin that, because this is really very good. And just like Peter
Thank
Drucker
you.
said, culture eats strategy for breakfast, and really what Luca just talked about really emphasizes that. I think between his comments and Terry, there's a huge, massive room for agility. The classic ways, if we think a plan is going to run us through, or a framework is going to run us through, or whatever, ain't going to happen. I learned from you, by the way, the other day, you had a podcast or something. You were talking about the difference, Ricardo, between the good old VUCA, and I think the new one is called BANI, I believe. And so, again, looking at, very good. Thank you for realities, Bruno. But also the BANI aspects and some of the nonlinear aspects that can truly happen in how we do things and how we do projects. And also, how the predictability aspect have become very difficult, right? So I want to go to Terry, and Terry, please help us out. How are you, arming yourself? I think the construct of SMS is great. I think some of the work that you've done is fantastic, but things will continue to change. Luca talked about changes in the ways of working and the impact of culture and impact of commitment. And the reality is those ways of working require us to be super adaptable, right? So how are you addressing that while you still maintain linkage strategy? Could maintain this whole strategy muscle in a way in the organization, because you contributed to that first, basically chapter in the book, which is really about project management, helping the strategic impact of projects. So love to hear your thoughts there.
Absolutely. One of the things that I've learned, and I've tried a lot of different things over the years, but, visualization is really helpful. So you'll see that, in some of the things you include in the book, I drew pictures, to try to, have something that people can be attracted to. And so to Luca's point, and to, all of your points, Ricardo and Elle as well, putting strategy at the top, because, the whole thing is about achieving the strategy. And as you mentioned, it's brutal. It's hard work to get there. But often, people don't realize, if you're coming up with a strategy and you get to wash your hands and just assign it to somebody else to do it, you don't understand all the different steps. So one of the frameworks, again, I visually put together, because some of our project managers didn't understand strategy, and the strategists didn't understand all the things it took to get to that, is that framework with different levels, starting with kind of a basic level, the basic, I think, as you've mentioned, the schedules, the costs, all of that, the scope type of stuff. Okay, that's just the ground floor. Then you kind of keep moving up, and it gets more and more difficult, more and more brutal, as Ricardo said, as you get further up into that to really reach strategy and strategic execution. Yeah. Managing your finances much more closely, your metrics, your resources, what they're doing, your capacity, what are the benefits you're really trying to achieve? How can you model that out and compare it to all of the dozens of things that you have competing for those same things? So you look at it more programmatically and across the portfolio. Then it's tied to the strategy. And then what if things change? What if you get hit with a pandemic and we had to take 50% of our projects down, and really we came up with a whole new strategy, literally on in a day. Yeah. Things hit. And so it for those people who love change, and I think this is the thing is, we're on this for a reason, and you can tell I'm very passionate about it. I love change because it makes a difference. It makes things better. But we need to help others, empowering our staff, but also empowering the leaders and helping them understand how it all connects. We're all part of that same team, because the strategy doesn't happen without the people that are doing the work.
Yeah. And you almost need to coin also that the future belongs to people who love change, right? So maybe that's another one we want to coin in the session, because the reality, it's very tough there. Nobody loves it easily, but if you can strengthen your muscles and you develop that kind of a mindset and aptitude, spot on. VUCA, BANI, changes, surprises, world mega events, the reality aspects Ricardo talked about, that would be fantastically addressed. Yeah, well
absolutely.
said.
And along with aptitude, I'll just put in one other. It's attitude and attitude. I mean, having the right attitude, that positive approach, regardless what it is, because any of these changes are always going to be difficult. But if you have the right leadership, the right attitude, the right approach to it, some of them you can make fun, even the biggest challenges.
Yeah. Exactly. What I was saying, it's really the soft skill now that makes the difference. No, if you have this attitude for the change, I mean, the hard skills you can always catch up with, but the main things today is really to have this attitude to the change. That is a soft skill.
Super.
Yeah, and I agree absolutely. And do you know what is the challenge? Is that soft skills are not very easy to learn from a book or from a class. Okay, I need to learn motivation. So you go and do a 8-hour training on motivation, and then you become. It doesn't work that way. So it's much harder. Okay, it's much more internal and the feeling. And one point I want just to highlight that for me, I want to share also a thinking I have about change is that, the people are afraid of change because many times they feel insecure. They feel that, I am, okay, I'm not perfect now, but I know how the game is played. But if we change, maybe my skills, maybe the work I'm doing, and it's hard. And many times I see that, people love to call for action, but an action that happens far away from them, and it's everything must change. For example, if you ask your company and say, oh, do we need to change? Absolutely. It's okay, let's start in your area. No, but it's not in my area. Here it's all good. And it just happens. So it's a very interesting thing. And Luca, I want to go back to you and ask a question to you. Okay, today, okay, what are you doing in terms of actions to improve the leadership of these young generations, and that will be the next gen? So which kind of actions that you can share with the people watching this webinar now?
Yeah, young generation, they have different goals in life, so they're very different, no, from maybe my generation. The luckiness is that I work in an industry that is the telecommunication industry, that is always at the top in terms of innovation, in terms of new things. Okay, so this is perfect for the new generation because this is exactly what they're looking for. They're not looking for a career progression. They're looking for, I want to do interesting things. So when Apple is approaching me for the launch of an innovation in the field, for example, in the telecommunication things that we are doing with them, I give to my young generation the possibility really to work on an interesting project, and this for them is really is the key. So having the possibility to empower again with a servant leadership style, to give the possibility to this young generation to work with interesting partners, to discover also innovation coming from outside and mixing it with the innovation that you can bring, for example, with our 5G, innovation in connectivity, and matching together with IoT innovation, matching together with other innovation that are coming from the market. This create really the environment where they like to work. So if you are able to create this kind of environment, this new generation will grow and will take responsibility in a protected way, because as I said, can happen that we do mistakes, in this kind of environment, and it's also fine because we don't know if, as Terry was saying, we don't know if this strategy will work in reality or not. We need to be also fast to reassess and change our strategy. The important thing is that we have an open culture. Okay, we don't blame, of course, the people. Okay, we can blame the company for wrong choices, but we create this open culture. This is for me another secret that in Sunrise I think we are doing very well. So this mix of ingredients I think can really attract and make our talent grow at the best.
Wow,
fantastic!
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Well said. I mean, so remember the book has the focus on the next gen, and I think Luca also added some very good remarks there, and I'm sure Terry would agree with some of his thoughts as well about the uniqueness of that next gen. and what they are looking for. And I hear the word impact a lot in the comments Luca made, right? So, they are much more interested. Can they be impactful? Luca talked to us so much about empowerment in his comments throughout our session, which, it's not an overused word. It's still not a highly practiced word, right? So I think that's really very important. We need to find ways by which we ease up still that mindset around control, around high alignment and so forth. This is not a world where you need to, master 90% even alignment. You need to find the right degree and just let go as long as you've reached some level of comfort, and of course depending on the application and the nature of the project as well. Speaking of that, and speaking of mistakes, and speaking of learning from challenges, I thought in early career would be the only time I learned from what not to do. I'm still today, as we speak, still learning from what not to do. So I want to hear from both of you, to really from your experiences, challenges, things you've faced, mistakes you've done, whatever has contributed and shaped your learning. If you can name one thing, give us one example. Maybe start with Terry first, and then we go to Luca. What's the one challenge that really shaped and affected your growth and your phenomenal success that you've had in your careers?
Well, Al, you actually hit on something I was going to mention right away. I'm learning every day, because things are changing so fast, as Luca mentioned, as we all realize, and people are changing, the generations are changing, and so we have to change with it. And so that's, again, one of the things that, I think I appreciate about my role and some of the things I've been able to do. As far as challenges, and I don't know if it's challenges as much as lessons. Change comes about because of people and a team of people that are making the change. And we realize that each one of us, is different. And so every team you have is going to be comprised of different people with different thoughts, different backgrounds, different skills. And it's really the challenge and the opportunity to really take that team of people and to form them into a group that's really what I like to think of as becomes high performing. No team starts as high performing, at least not that I've ever experienced. It's a group of people with all sorts of different perspectives, bringing them together, how to get them focused on a goal that they all find impactful and they all want to strive for, they can all work together on. And so, that's really been one of the things I've tried to do is get teams to want to be that high performing, to have that something that inspires them. And I'm going to use an example of a project that I was assigned 2 years ago. I was brought in, I was for some reason, I kept getting brought in the middle of projects that were in trouble. So this was another one of those. And the team was struggling. They weren't making any progress. And as I, observed them for a little while, I realized it was because they weren't talking. They were in their own little silos. They weren't communicating. They were doing things very differently. Some of them didn't like each other, didn't trust each other. And so the first thing we needed to do when I was put in charge of the project, it wasn't talk about tasks and timelines and budgets or any of that. I had a mandatory meeting where I got them all in a room for a few hours and said, we're going to learn about each other. And we went through, it was kind of like a Myers-Briggs type of exercise. It's called Real Colors. We use it at our organization quite a bit, super easy. And we learned about ourselves and what colors we were, and we learned about each other. And it got to be very enlightening how, some of our colors blended, some of them didn't, but the diversity of colors that we all represented. And it really got to be a foundational thing for this team and brought them together, because all of a sudden in the next meeting, it's like, oh, okay, I understand why you're reacting that way because you're blue, or whatever color it would be. Yeah. And just understanding and empowering the team, as well as Luca mentioned, got them working together slowly but surely, because I think they had a greater understanding of each other. It's one of the soft skills that we mentioned. And so it's not just coming from the leadership. I think the team all needs to develop those soft skills as well and learn to work together. I'm very proud of that team, because it started out pretty rough, very, very rough. Yeah. And at the end of it, that team came together and actually won the Mayo Clinic Excellence in Teamwork Award.
It's funny, Terry, when you talked about that and you talked about different colors and personalities and the impact of those, you reminded me like when there was finally the right degree of focus on DE&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion, I had such a hard time realizing we are the leaders of this in projects, right? Because projects only excel with the diversity of views and giving the equal platform for every voice and including the different ideas and the opposing views and so forth. So it's so natural. And then when you nail it, like you said, with finding the ingredients for high-performing teams. And I'm sure you know the work also of many of the leaders in that space, kind of like our classic 5 layers that we had Pat Lencioni over the years and so forth started that. So there's a lot of work in this area. So great stuff. Luca, can you top that?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with the revision. I had, let's say, the fortune in my career to have worked in different countries. Okay, so with many different cultures, with many different teams, and luckily also Sunrise is very international. So also my team is made by really different people, and I think this is the ingredient, no? Sometimes to do the things better, because you have also different angles of view, no? You are sometimes a little bit too much focused on certain things, and people can change your point of view, and you can see the things in a different way. So I can tell you my experience in a nutshell. I mean, when I started, this is a Swiss company, Sunrise. However, it's not too much international, at least at the beginning. Now it's part of an international group, but at the beginning it was very Swiss. So I arrived and everybody told me, Luca, here we are in Switzerland, everything is working perfectly and we need the perfect Swiss project manager. Okay. And then I said, okay, but I think we need also some diverse project manager. So I started to bring people, especially my tech people from offshore in Switzerland, and nobody was believing that, for example, an Indian or a Chinese guy can work very well in a Swiss environment, very precise. And in reality, after few time, everybody realized that these people are super valuable. They have super technical skill, and they are also very good in communication, with different level of communication. And we started now with a team that is completely mixed up, and we don't have any difference. You are internal, you are an external, you are a consultant. No, for me this is very important. So I was able, luckily, to bring a little bit of diversity in a Swiss environment. It was at the beginning a little bit more precise, but less diverse, let's say.
Excellent.
I want to know, because maybe Switzerland was so sharp that maybe the projects just happened by themselves, right? No need for managers. So just perfect. But look, I need, of course, we could have gone. I still want to take one question, but there is one thing that I want to highlight for those watching this. What Alzeitun said is very important, is that you that are a young professional watching us, don't think that you do mistakes when you are young, and then when you become more senior, then it's an error-free career. Not at all. Not at all. We all can tell many times we mess up, and what is important is that you learn quickly from that, and you adapt, adjust, and learn quick, and you are humble to understand that you are not perfect at all. So it's very important, because I know young people, when they have trouble, they think, okay, when I become a senior, then everything. Because what happens is, when you move to the ladder of your career, the challenges change, right? The challenges change. Things become far more complex. But I cannot finish this without making this point, because this is so critical for all of you to understand. I want to take one question here for you both to answer before we wrap up. And the question is from my dear friend, the volunteer from PMI in Brazil, André. So he asked you both, Terry and Luca, what do you use to manage your projects that you consider different from all that you see? What make your project management, Terry, approach unique, and Luca unique? What is the special flavor you put on it that you can share with the public?
Well, if I can start and say, I put the people really as first. For me, this is the fundament, the key, and is what I wrote in my article. Really, this is my style. So the people are really empowered, and luckily I have enough experienced people that they can run by themselves a lot of things, and I don't have to control, and I want to give the right freedom to the people. So this is a little bit my secret. That doesn't mean that of course you are not helping when failure happens, because it happens every time. I mean, we know in our professional life this happen, and then you are there exactly with your experience, with your seniority, to help and support. So this is a little bit my secret in bringing successful project in life.
So, Luca's absolutely right. I mean, it's like I mentioned before, it's all about the people. I'm going to give maybe a little bit different answer from a different perspective. I like to start with the strategy, and something that really is going to, like I mentioned, inspire people, get them excited about the work that they're doing, and really see the value that it's going to have. And being in a healthcare organization, for us, it all ties back to the patients, the people that we're serving, back to the servant leadership. And so starting with something that is an inspirational strategy that our organization is striving towards, and then getting the people excited about being a part of that and empowered to do what they need to do. So it's back to that full spectrum. If you can tie all of the pieces together, I think that's where you can really get success and turn that strategy into reality.
Look, it's fantastic. Look, we could have spent, I would say, hours here, but I promise we need to try to stick in 30 something minutes. So first, I have no words to thank you both for that. So now, before we close, I would love, Luca and Terry, that your final advice to all of us. So your closing remarks before we finish. We can start with you, Luca, on that. So if you can share with us what is your advice for those
no pressure.
No pressure.
Exactly what I was thinking. I mean, we are in my industry, telco is really under pressure. Okay, it's a really dynamic market, so there is a lot of pressure, especially in this period. For me, the important thing is always to be calm and respectful with the people. Okay, we are working all together to do the best that we can to achieve our goals. So it's very, very important. Also under pressure. Okay, I did recently some mistakes, for example, and we create a little bit of a mess for our customer. We had to clean up something, but this is normal. I mean, this is life. The important things are very focused on what we want to achieve, and always try to pursue the objective, but without losing, the controller, without losing exactly the control under this pressure.
Perfect. Thank you, Terry.
Wow. So, I guess I've actually thought about this in the past, because being at an organization that's sometimes moving very fast, sometimes moving very slow, and one of the things I've really liked to feel that I brought to it is a passion, first of all, for the profession. If you can bring passion to what you're doing and excite people and get them motivated. So passion's my first one. The second one is patience, because sometimes things don't go the way you want. As Luca mentioned, it goes a different way. You have to, just be patient, try things out, calming type of thing, and get the teams as a leader. Sometimes they get a little excited. So how to be patient and guide them that things are going to turn out. But then the last one is always persistence. Just like with moving to strategy management services, I mean, it didn't start out that. I mean, it barely started out as project management as a profession, as Al remembers, back in my early days. But, the persistence, taking those little steps at a time, finding those inroads that connect people, that get them to be part of the vision you may have, and then maybe sometimes changing your vision a little bit as well. So I think it's really the passion, being patient, but being persistent.
But thank you, my dear all.
Oh, my friend, this was very rich, and you've seen the comments from the attendees as well, right? So you've seen a great friend from Boston, Rick, for example, early on in the sessions, is making a comment that this is like music to his ears, like a symphony, etc. Right? So, and Abalone, I don't want to miss his name up. He made some, very good comments about also this whole mix between strategy and people and how that really contributes to success. This was a wonderful multitude of points raised here, especially when we not only addressed strategy very well and people very well, but also drew so many bridges back and forth and then anchored things down in values a lot, right? So whether it's the value around the optimism and the positiveness, Terry talking about attitude, and there's that old saying, it's your attitude, not your aptitude, right, that determines your altitude. So I think that was really important reminder. The last combination between Luca and hers around the next gen, really this whole what's even Terry then mentioned as persistence, whether we leave it there or turn it into resilience or adaptability or a combo thereof, right? Because of the high focus on the culture that many points emphasize. I think this is a lot of richness here in this session around what the next gen really need to think about, not in terms of only what project management and program management can do, but how they shape their careers to really create consistent impact. I think this session today is a lot also about impact or strategic value creation, which I find fantastic mix here between our two wonderful guests today. So this has been excellent.
Thank you. So now we are coming really to an end, and for me, Terry, I cannot agree more, and I'm so happy that you mentioned the concept of passion, because passion, many people think that it's very fluffy, that people, but passion, it's not for others to see. That, oh, this is passionate. No, it's something between you and yourself. Mm-hmm. It's something that makes you wake up early and do the job and get the things done. And this is something that really benefits you initially, and of course will benefit others by benefiting you. And I want to finish this series with that, because we when we started the idea of this series, we thought, when we published the book, and said we need to have an opportunity to have an informal discussion on some of these topics. And I'm so happy first that Al accepted the challenge, because we're doing this in a volunteer work. It's nothing. Look, many people think that, oh, the book is yours. Then no, we are just the authors. It's not. We do not own the book. It's just the content. But what we really want is to create the best possible impact. And this is why we invited all these people, all the speakers, to help us to figure out their ideas, what worked, what didn't work, what is important. And it's impossible for me to wrap up this series in a better way, okay? In a better way. And I want just to highlight to you that all of you can watch this. If you go to the website, we'll place this. They are all on YouTube. But look, they are for you. So you can watch them on LinkedIn. You can watch them wherever you want to watch them. And we managed, not we, but my dear friend Alze, to manage with Wale, for those who are interested, to get 20% off using this code, okay? This again, this is, no, we didn't do this basically to just as an advertisement. We did this because we truly believe we can help you and also learn from you and from your comments during this journey. So thank you all for participating. Thanks from my heart. It's wonderful to see you again, Terry. Luca, it's wonderful to see you and your approach. My brother, thank you very much for accepting to participate on this, always on this journey. And to all of you, all the best in your projects. Okay, until next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.